Hey everyone, Esther Allen here. Good to be back. Hope everybody's doing good today. It's been a beautiful couple of days and I've been meaning to get on here and talk to everyone. I decided I would go into the El Mirage, Arizona story. I told you guys this one a little bit and said I would finish about the light that went through the top of my head. This occurred in the 2015. The other story actually was in 2015 and I said it was 2017. I get some of this stuff wrong when I'm telling you guys these stories because I had so much happen in like 4 consecutive years, really more than that. And still continue to have incidents, and I try to remember them all, and no, I'm not documenting them like I used to. But I'm about to write my second book, so that'll give me a place to document it. Like I did with my first one. And yes, my first book is still coming out. It's called Immersion As Above. And I really love the title because this is all about something going on above us. And yes, I do believe in the above. Whether it's a projection or not, whatever, there are angelic forces and there are also demonic forces, yes. But there are angelic forces, and I'd like to focus more on the angelic forces because we need them. And in order to really find ourselves in a place where there's a connection, we need to talk about them and bring them into our reality and discuss that, because angelic forces are here to protect us. They're here to guide us. They're our big brothers and sisters. And I really do believe that. And I believe there's a whole lot more to existence since all of my experiences have occurred. I know there is. So in 2015, I was very sick. When it was a year after my accident. This was a really, when I left Arizona at that time, and it's in my book, there was a tragedy that occurred on the interstate, and I witnessed it because I made a choice to go a different direction at the last minute. Very strange how that happened, and I almost got into a 4th accident, but there were 7 people and 4 of the 7 were killed, and it was really horrific. I witnessed the whole thing. And there was a child that looked just like my little boy in that accident, and I struggled after that. I felt like it almost fractured my soul in some way again. I was already broken from my husband's death and dealing with two accidents back to back, and then this was just, it sent me over the edge. And a lot of activity occurred as well in the skies around us that I noticed. I had to pull over multiple times going home, and I took some photographs of some interesting things. I even pulled into a state park, which I'm not sure why, but it was a place to go that was off the interstate. I'm not real familiar with that trip that way from Arizona to Louisiana home. I always went the other way, which was Interstate 40 to 17. And 17 is one of my favorite roads. I love that stretch of road. It's beautiful. Okay, so while I was visiting with my nephew Christopher in El Mirage, Arizona, I had been staying with my brother, but the house was extremely hot. I told you guys about that. I was sweating a lot and all this, and it was starting to get to where I needed AC a little bit, so I would go over to see Chris more. My brother is so used to heat, you guys. He doesn't like air conditioning, and he lives in Arizona, so I mean, he'll use it, but he was working at the time when I was there, and he would turn it off when he'd leave, and I never wanted him to stop doing that. It's weird that I have to talk about that because it sounds like I'm making a big deal out of it, but I'm not. It's just part of the story. It's part of it. So I went to Chris's house quite a bit, his son, to visit and cool off and visit with Gabriel, my great nephew, who I absolutely fell in love with. I adore him. He's precious. Oh my God. And I wanted to stay. I wish I could have stayed with Chris. I would have loved to have helped him with Gabriel. It was a very stable time in my life, but I took Gabriel to the mountains a lot, and he meditated with me all the time. This child loved meditation, and he continued meditating after I left. So I feel like I've got this beautiful beacon of light in Arizona that just holds space for everyone there, in protective way. It's amazing. And so I'm glad that I taught him, and I took him to the place where I played, and he played there just like I did, wrote, with a stick in the dirt and all that. So anyway, when I was at my dog Mia just had a blast with him. They fell in love with each other. Anyway, I was putting, let me start at the beginning. Okay, I was putting laundry away for Chris one day, and I had gone upstairs, and I was walking through the hallway with this laundry basket, and then all of a sudden this white light comes just barging through my head, right? Just down through the top of my head, through my body, and I had done these meditations all the time that literally would have probably looked just like what I was doing with this white light coming down through my head. So I just left it well, maybe this is somehow my imagination's locked onto this light, but it was really there, and it was really uncomfortable because it was annoying. Like, it was bright, and when I went to sleep at night, it was still there, but it felt like it was coming from above. So even when I was laying down, it just felt like it was still coming down into my head. And I didn't know what to do about this light. But I was like not going to go to a doctor and ask about it because I was honestly kind of afraid that they might say I had a tumor or something in my brain, and I was really meditating a lot. And anyway, this light would not go away. And I started, I went to sleep one night. I want to tell you two stories at the same time, so I'm trying to decide which way to go. One of them is about an ascended being named Syrian that came into my room and was there often while I was with Chris. Chris actually saw me working out one day doing these moves, which were very unusual, and he told me to watch this program called OA on Netflix, which I'd never seen. I didn't watch television. I don't watch movies or TV or any of that hardly ever. I do know a lot of movies from when my kids were little because I watched them with my children. But as far as since I'm not a real big movie person, I love movies though. I really do. I'm not saying anything against them or any of that. I'm just telling you my story. So anyway, he told me to watch OA, and it was about a woman who had died a lot of times and was brought back. And when she came back, she was learning how to make these movements, which was some type of key. I didn't watch it very long, but it was some type of key to the afterlife or going back into that realm is what I understood. So it was a way to come back from it and a way to go into it, which reminded me a lot of my dream when I was a child. I had this recurring dream for 17 years, and I escaped. Literally, I escaped after I was murdered in my dream. The first time I escaped with a lot of other children. There were 12 of them. And it was really interesting because we were all murdered in the basement of this, in the bowels of this castle. And the children and I survived. After death, our spirits were still there, but they were trapped. And so in my mind, it's like, okay, maybe that 17 years me and these children were trying to get out of there. The dream kept happening because we were trapped souls, and the only way to get out or escape from that so that we could reincarnate was to continue to try to work the consciousness part of all of this, because we were altering the timeline so that we would not end up being murdered so we could escape. I don't know how that all worked, but we didn't ever go completely back to that place, but we were able to alter it enough to escape, where we changed the dream enough to leave. So, yeah, that was weird. And the dream stopped when I was 22, and my dad died in that same year. So I always wondered if that was connected. I don't know. I always look at the psychology of everything, as well as the religious and the spiritual and the paranormal and the phenomenal, the theosophical, all of it matters to me. So anyway, back to this El Mirage, Arizona story. So Luke Air Force Base was right behind Christopher's backyard. His back fence, you could go to the back of the fence and you can see Luke Air Force Base from his house. And it was really weird because after this light started going through me, I went to sleep one night. Well, this light woke me up and it was driving me crazy. And I couldn't go to sleep. And I sat up on my knees and I did the weirdest thing. I put my hand into something and all of a sudden I was flying in a craft that was very small and I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else. And then I remember opening my eyes and collapsing back down in my bed and then waking up the next morning. But the strangest part was I couldn't decide if that was a dream or if it really happened. So it was really weird. And then, I mean, it was so strange. Some of my stories are so bizarre. So anyway, after that happened, one day I was walking, well, now I'm like, I think this happened before that happened, but I was walking through the hallway the same way with my laundry in the basket, and I got real dizzy and I kind of went up against the wall in the hallway and leaned up against it, and I was holding my laundry basket and I kind of dropped it and was holding it, and all of a sudden I see this kaleidoscope come out of my third eye would be where it was. It looked like a projection and it was spinning, and there were images within this projection of this kaleidoscope looking at different timelines and different times. And me, I was in almost all of it, you know, or in all of it, I should say, not almost, but the images were familiar, but then again, they weren't, you know, because they were not just from this timeline. And I've always said that, and I knew that, but it was like somebody was viewing my life. I couldn't understand that one. I felt like someone did that to me. Like someone unlocked something so they could see it. And maybe it was my higher self. I don't know. But it happened. And it really looked crazy. And I'm telling you, I began to get really spiritual because of all of this. Because when things like this happen to you, that's your evidence. And if it doesn't change you, then something's wrong. It changed me. Yes, I've backslid a bit since then, but I have had no spiritual support whatsoever, and I'm surprised I've stayed this strong coming from my background. But there's something powerful in this experience that I had. It was really enough to kind of shake me. And I was back in Arizona, and I really, as a child, I had experiences in the mountains there because we grew up. My dad mined gold in Arizona. My dad had a thing about gold, and I kind of still do a little bit myself. I would love to go back there and live. I'd love to go back and mine gold. That was a wonderful life for a child, but not for adults. It was a really hard life. No electricity, no running water, no indoor plumbing. Very, very serious stuff all the time going on. If you got hurt out there, you had a long way to go to get to a town, and you either went through Crown King or you had to go all the way back down off the mountain where my dad actually bulldozed the road. My dad bulldozed him and this man named Floyd Hayes. He worked for a man named Doc Glazer. I just remember the man's name. He was in California. His name was Doc Glazer, and he's the one who funded my dad's gold mine project. It was an incredible time. And I remember when we moved down off of that mountain, because there were blizzards and my mom would lose us in the snow. It was terrifying. So my dad moved us down off of there, and we lived in a log cabin that had electricity. It was the first time I'd ever really experienced something modern like that. Because I was so little when we got there, and I was growing up into that. And it was interesting because my dad started preaching. He had a reel-to-reel tape player, and he would preach and send the tapes to KASA radio station in Phoenix. And then my dad became pretty famous, and they had billboards at one time all over Phoenix of him and my mother. They had a beautiful church with big white pillars. I remember the church, and I loved it. And we had a 6-bedroom house with a swimming pool in the backyard. So we were like the Beverly Hillbillies in a way, from the mountains in Arizona, mining gold with no electricity, down into this amazing life where my dad was literally becoming famous. He preached on television and radio there. They were national, but I think they were getting ready to go national. They were local, but they were getting ready to go national or something like that. But as all preachers, there were so many attacks and so much happened, and my dad had enough issues as it was. So you can love God and not be perfect. You can love God and have things happen to you. We're not perfect beings. Yes, we're supposed to strive for it, especially if we are spiritual people. But my dad kind of went from being this rough and tumble cowboy kind of man, big ox kind of guy who really didn't know how to take care of daughters. He even said it to us. He apologized to me before he died. He told me I had no business raising daughters, and I think he was right. I've had to heal a lot, and I've forgiven him. So I have my own things, they're my personal things, and I'm just saying that so people understand where I'm coming from. I'm very passionate about the things that happened between us because he hurt me really bad. But there's been so much trauma passed down from our ancestors, right? You inherit these things, so you have to stop them somewhere. And I really think that's why I'm still alive, and what happened to me was to stop a lot of this from ever being passed down into my children and my children's children. But then, now I'm worrying about my children's health because they've been vaccinated, all of them. So that worries me. I hope saying that word doesn't get me in trouble, but it does concern me. I don't want to have any problems, and they sure scare you out there with that. So, I'm not saying anything that isn't out there. But anyway, so there I was in this. I'm going back all the way back to this time when I saw these kaleidoscope things coming out of me. And it came out of right here. And that's the second time, because there was another time when I saw a 3-dimensional pyramid or a tetrahedron, a triangle, which is but it's 3-dimensional, looks like a pyramid. It was literally spinning when the wall changed. And there was also, I've never, ever told anybody about this, but I mentioned it to someone yesterday who's helping me write my book. And I don't know what it was, and I couldn't redraw all of it. I just remember the top image of it, and it was like this line of symbols that came down right beside that pyramid, little tiny tetrahedron that was spinning. That was just bizarre. Yeah, it's in one of my other videos. Now I'm just talking off the cuff like I do, guys. This is me. You can tell I don't you can tell that I don't spend time trying to create a story to get on here and talk to you. It's all right off of the cuff with me. I don't plan anything, except for I did know that I was going to talk about these incidents that I had in Mirage, Arizona. So the third incident that I had while I was there, so there's always this 3 thing, right? So my third incident, I went outside one night, and I still smoked cigarettes, but I was quitting. And at that time I would smoke off of 1 cigarette every day. So I only smoked 1 cigarette a day, but it wasn't even really about smoking at that point. It was just about the mental part, letting it go. God, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. It's gross. Those things smell terrible. But anyway, I was sitting out there, and I was putting out the last of this cigarette, and I looked up, and I saw 2 craft, and I could tell they were craft, and one was red and one was blue, and they were, no, was it blue or green? It was green or blue. It was green. Red and green. Yes, red and green. And the 2 of them, I'm saying that, but I don't know why I'm struggling with the color now, but I remember the red one, and the other one was either green or blue. And I can't believe I can't remember what color that was. They dropped straight down out of the sky. Like they just went, like it reminded me of watching that restaurant. I think it's in Seattle where it spins, but I think it goes down, or like watching the ball at at New Year's Eve drop straight down, because it wasn't fast. It wasn't like it fell. It just went straight down, and then they went straight back up, and then they went straight back down. And when I told you guys this story of the night 7 stars fell from the sky when I was 22 years old in 1989, I've got to redo the story, and I told you guys why. So I will be redoing that story. As I was driving, I saw 7 stars falling from the sky. Well, they dropped the same way that these things did. And that is exactly what it reminded me of. So in my mind, was I seeing stars or was I seeing spacecraft? Because stars usually, they shoot across the sky or they'll fall at an angle, where these went straight down. And it was the most bizarre thing, because like I said, it felt almost like I was looping in time, because they just kept falling in the same place out of my window, and this happened 7 times. So I don't know. I've had some very strange things happen. That was really crazy seeing that. I'm sorry I can't remember if it was blue or green, and I keep seeing both now, so that's confusing me. It's really confusing me on the color. I don't know why, but I can't tell you if it was blue or green. So anyway, those 3 things were like the main things that happened while I was there. And the Syrian, I would really like to spend a little more time on that story with you guys, because he looked just like an ascended master, and he wore a robe with a hood. He looked Polynesian more than he looked Chinese or Japanese or any of those. But he loved Bruce Lee, and I could tell that he was definitely Asian. It was the strange, it was, like when I would wake up, it was usually between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. Chris was usually asleep, and I would get up and I would exercise with this being, and that was why he was there. But when he woke me up, when I'd open my eyes, he would be looking at me like, you know who I am. Like, you have to remember me, kind of connection to this being. And almost like he was trying to get me to understand that I knew him, that I was familiar to him, which I felt that as well. There was a really strong connection, and he had the greatest sense of humor because of Bruce Lee. Like, he was a huge fan of Bruce Lee's. So much so that I felt like he was Bruce Lee. And I was like, am I dealing with Bruce Lee and he just looks different? Because he really didn't look like Bruce Lee to me. But there was such a strong Bruce Lee energy there. That's all I can tell you. Very incredible soul, and definitely probably disappointed in me right now, because I'm not where I should be actively on my training, so to speak, on my exercising. He helped me get my core strong, very, very strong, because I have internal injuries. Most of my injuries you could not see on the outside of my body. Most of my injuries occurred on the inside of my body. I've got a lot of broken vertebrae. I've broken every vertebrae in my neck, I think, except one. I think they've all been fractured all the way down my spine, except for, I mean, there's some that haven't been, but I have one at the base of my spine. I was never going to be able to have surgery because you would die on the table to have this repair done. And they told me one day I may fall down because of this bone deterioration that's going on there. It was already fractured and weakened. So that's what I worked on all the time, because the prognosis of that is one day I may not be able to walk, and I would die quicker from this, much quicker. That's what I had been told through the process of my time being in the medical conveyor belt, so to speak. I saw a lot of doctors. I saw a lot of, just to have my shoulder surgery, I had to go to two experts to have them clear my neck, because my neck had been broken in pretty good place and a pretty good break. So they cleared the neck though, so I could have my shoulder surgery replaced. My arm was ripped out in the motorcycle accident, and it was gnarly as it could be. I had a guy run up and grab my helmet trying to pull it off, and it was still strapped to my neck. My neck was broken. I mean, one of the guys that was with us on this motorcycle ride started screaming at him and told him to leave me alone. You know, he was not helping me. He was literally hurting me. And then my ex-husband, who I was riding with, he told me to get up. And we were both in shock and nobody was thinking, and I stood up. And when I stood up, my whole arm went flop. It just dropped off of the shoulder inside the skin. I could feel my whole arm fall away from my body, but it was still attached by flesh. There was no outside cut. And then I started screaming. The pain from that, I would say this was probably the most painful out of all of the things that I had. But when I talk about other injuries, I say the same thing. My stomach wall was ripped off the iliac bone in the accident with my husband. And I can't tell you, I mean, when your stomach's torn away from the bone, it's... some of these things were so bad, and I've had so many injuries like that, and I've experienced a lot of pain. Physical pain has been... I couldn't believe some of the things that were said to me when I was healing and still going through this process about, like, I didn't suffer and I didn't go through anything. I didn't earn anything in my life. I worked hard my whole life, and I've earned every stripe to get well. A lot of people would have gave up. I tried to put a bullet in my head, I'm not going to lie, after my shoulder surgery, because I was in so much pain and the doctor did not write my prescription correctly. So I spent an entire weekend at home having my arm having been cut off and the bone having been shaped and shaved to where they could put that thing in there. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. I lost a lot of weight. My husband was a wreck when he got home, because he had like 2 weeks to go when the doctor called me and said, you have to come in tonight. I literally saw the doctor in New Orleans at midnight. That's how late it was, and had surgery the next morning because the bone had died in my shoulder. So I've been through a great deal of things, and I just don't, you know, I don't live there. The only time I'm talking about all these things is on here so that I can tell you my story, because that is exactly what I am promoting to you, is my story. And yeah, I am promoting that story to you because I'm on here talking to you about it, and I'm writing a book about it. And it's important that I share these things. I just know that it is. The paranormal things that occurred afterwards have been I've heard a lot of people talk about those things in comparison and say demonic stuff, and it's not. When I was confronted by the Council of Nine and I went through this detoxing thing, I threw up a lot. And the throwing up was not because I was possessed by something. It was because I was detoxing alcohol and hard pills, prescription drugs, one of them being ketamine, by the way. And I really think the ketamine, because it was added to the repertoire of things I had, was like a catalyst for opening me up in a way to all of this. But I was already very psychic, and I think that the traumas that I experienced, many of them, multiple times, had a part to play in that as well. You guys, I just looked up and realized I'm at 29 minutes. I'm at almost 30 minutes, y'all. I need to get off of here. Love everybody. I hope this explains more, and now we're rolling, right? We're getting somewhere, and I can't wait for the book to come out. It's supposed to be out this month. I don't think it's going to make it. I think it's going to be next month. So, but we'll see. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.